Hi students, it's Mrs. T, and this is our second short lecture about religion as a social institution. So this is a continuation of the lesson 2 video from week 14. And in this video, we're going to talk about these topics that I've got written on the board already. Religion is a social institution, as you already have learned, and you've got those bullet points in your notes from the last time that we had our lecture together. And one of those bullet points talks about how religion identifies, or religion focuses on supernatural concepts instead of natural concepps. It focuses on the supernatural connection to natural concepts. So for instance, when my mother was diagnosed with cancer, cancer is a natural thing, right? Or I mean, we don't think of it as something good in nature, but it occurs in nature and it's deadly for us. And so we go to a doctor. We did in the case of my mother, went to doctors, got diagnoses, got a game plan together of all of the empirical scientific stuff that we were going to do from a clinical standpoint. But then the doctor turned and looked at us and said, you know what? Prayer needs to be part of your everyday kind of cancer regimen also. So prayer is one of those rituals that was also on the list of the types of religion, the characteristics of religion. But prayer, he said, needed to be part of our daily cancer attack regimen. Right? So supernatural, in other words, when there is an uncertain outcome for natural events like cancer, not everybody dies. Some people recover. Some people go into remission. Some people can be managed, etc. Right? So there's an uncertain outcome to that, air quotes, natural occurrence of cancer. Then we're going to attack it with empirical evidence, but let's try to involve the supernatural also, because as we know from religious heritage and religious customs and religious stories and religious practice, there are many cures that cannot be attributed to empirical science, but to, I guess, a supernatural source, right? So it becomes part of our custom, it becomes part of our norm to overlap the supernatural with the natural in some cases. There are many questions about things that natural science, empirical evidence cannot answer, like the afterlife topic we were talking about in the last video. But even when there is a natural situation, like an illness or a disease that you're dealing with, and there's an uncertain outcome, then a lot of times prayer is involved. Unfortunately, we've had some terrible straight line wind events and tornadoes in our state recently, and when people are interviewed after after they've survived these kinds of things, you hear them all the time saying, well, we were huddled here and we were all praying. Right? So there's a natural occurrence happening. It's uncommon, but it's natural, the tornado coming through and destroying your house. But they're huddled together and they are invoking supernatural guidance, supernatural interference, I guess, with the outcome, this uncertain outcome of a tornado. And so that's kind of what the concept that we're going to talk about today is, the overlap between the supernatural and the natural, and also the separation between those two concepts over time. Okay, so supernatural versus natural, let me make that be the last time I say those two words, because now I'm going to introduce you to some words that Emil Durkheim defined for us from a sociological standpoint. One word is sacred and the other word is profane. People don't use this word profane in common everyday speech too much anymore. You maybe know what the word profanity means. It means like bad language or uneducated language, literally is what it means. So profane is the root word of that profanity word that some of you might know, that the common uneducated people use profanity. Well, profane means commonplace. It means everyday. It would be those natural circumstances that I was talking about a minute ago. So there's lots of things that are profane, commonplace, everyday, very explainable with empirical evidence, very unnecessary to go to the supernatural realm to explain profane things. They're not mysterious. They are not mystical. They are common everyday things, like your bacon and eggs in the morning. It's a profane thing. Okay. And that's what profane means: common, everyday, unexcited stuff that occurs every single day. Religion gives us the breakdown between things that are not profane, in other words, sacred, things that are otherworldly, things that are special, things that cannot be explained with empirical evidence. These are sacred things. Sacred things are usually those topics that are focused on in belief systems. When all religions have belief systems that guide behavior, and it's the sacred aspect of the promise of an afterlife, or the knowledge that in the belief system, the acceptance that there is something stronger than you that has power over you, that you can use the rituals and the symbols that exist in religion to try to influence. Hey, you've got more power than I do, so I really want this outcome over here. Hey, will you do it for me? Kind of. So we overlap that sacred aspect, the things that we have no control over, the things that are otherworldly, things that are supernatural. That's what sacred things are. And religion identifies the difference between those two concepts, sacred and profane, and it separates them, and also kind of highlights, when we look at this objectively, we can kind of highlight the mix where these two kinds of things mix. A tornado's coming. We'll ask any climatologist, a meteorologist, and they can give you all of the rotary motion fluid physics that they want to tell you about as to what causes these tornadoes in the atmosphere. So they've got all kinds of empirical evidence about tornadoes. But so many times people will overlap the, hey, sacred component of my belief system, will you please interfere with this so that we have as positive of an outcome as possible? Okay? So religion is about sacred versus profane things, the differences and the overlaps in those two kinds of concepts. And there's different types of religious belief systems that we can examine from around the world. Two in particular that we're going to talk about today in our short video. There are theistic religions and animistic religions. So theistic, this word here comes from Greek, I believe, and it means a god. And I'm going to put God here with a lowercase g, because theistic religions, there are some religions that use the word God as the name for a supreme being. I am not using this word right now as the name for a supreme being. Or it doesn't have to be a supreme being, an otherworldly being. Okay, I'm using this just to simply mean that there are creatures, maybe creatures not the right word, there are entities, there are beings in belief systems that are classified as gods. And when there is a belief system that has a god or gods as the focus of it, like the controlling mechanism of it, it's called a theistic religion. Theism, religion based on a god or gods. So there are two types of theism that we're going to talk about here: monotheism and polytheism. I think you know the difference between these two prefixes. Mono means one and poly means multiple. So there are many religions around the world that are theistic religions. Some of them are monotheistic, meaning one God. Again, I'm going to use the lowercase here because I'm not talking about somebody's name. I'm talking about a concept of a supreme being or a more powerful being than humans, for instance. And some religions are polytheistic, meaning multiple. How many multiple? I don't know. Lots multiple. Okay? Even if it's just two, then still it's a polytheistic religion. So Hinduism, for instance, one of the religions, a major world religion with a huge following, oldest world religion that you can find, is a polytheistic religion, for instance. Lots and lots, millions of followers around the world. Monotheism, Judaism, for instance, is a very, very old monotheistic religion. And with one God, of course, the name for the Jewish God, he has many names throughout the Testament and the rituals and the symbols that that are presented in the story that we follow in Judaism. But God with a capital G is sometimes used as his name. Certainly the Christian God uses this capital G to say the name of the deity, the name of the monotheistic entity in that belief system. So in a theistic religion, the monotheistic gods are all powerful, almighty, supreme, all knowing, almighty, omnipresent is a word that some of you maybe know. It's meaning he's everywhere all the time, throughout all time and space, throughout all history, and before humans were even walking the planet, he was. And I use the word he because that's typically the pronoun that's used in monotheistic religions, is he. So in a monotheistic religion, there's one God, and therefore that God controls everything, from every amoeba on the planet to to the sunspots that are occurring in the solar system right now, and everything in between. And so in a polytheistic religion, however, when you see multiple gods, usually those gods collectively control everything and have influence over everything, but you'll have like specialty gods. So this god controls this particular, the ocean, and this god controls the atmosphere, and this god controls the land, and this god controls the sun, and this god controls war, and this god controls beauty, and etc. Right? So, and this god controls the harvest, or any of these kinds of things. So in polytheistic religions, multiple gods grouped together cover everything, but individual gods cover the sacred of some components of life, and others cover the sacred of other components of life. So this sacred is all wrapped up in a monotheistic God into that one being that is a monotheistic God, whereas the sacred is broken down into however many gods are in your polytheistic religion in polytheism. Okay? Animistic religions are interesting. Animism is the belief that spirits and like energy, spirits and energy exist in everything, and they have some sort of control over the outcomes of things in daily life. So you and I would have a spirit. I, for instance, talked about me in the last video, not the fleshy part of me, but the mind and the soul and the gut feeling and the heart feelings and those kinds of things that are me. So if I was part of an animistic religion, those kinds of interior world of self would be the spirits or the energy that's connected to your spirit or energy, that's connected to the trees, that's connected to the air, that's connected to the fishes in the river. Every single thing has a spirit and an energy that's connected and has some sort of outcome. The way that we interact with, the way that we refer to and treat with respect or disrespect other things in our environment, in our daily lives, the spirits or the energy can have a certain outcome for us. Were we respectful and therefore get respect in return? Were we destructive? Were we damaging? Were we all of these different kinds of things? The spirits and the energy in everything is connected and therefore has that outcome. We get what we put into it, essentially, in an animistic religion. For instance, if you've seen the movie Avatar, I know you have, I think it was like 2005 or something when it came out, but that tree of life, the Eywa kind of tree of life, this is like an animistic kind of head spirit, and then there's all those different connections that they talked about between, what are those big things that they locked tails with and rode? I don't know what those things were called, but all of those things had that shared spirit, that shared energy. So if you look at the Na'vi people, I think that's what they were called on Pandora in that movie, that's an animistic religion that you're looking at. It doesn't mean that you worship animals, it means that you have a spirit. Anima means a soul. Anima is a Latin word that means a soul or a life. So even plants have life because they have birth, growth, and generation, right? They have They sprout from seeds, they grow from seeds, they produce flowers and produce new seeds and produce a different generation, right? So they have a life. Anima is a Latin word that means life, soul, energy, spirit. So animistic religions don't have a central focus on a god or multiple gods, but everything around us is connected through this energy matrix, so to speak, and therefore it guides. That's the belief system that unites people and guides behaviors, gives you motivation for daily life behavior and ideas about your role in the afterlife, or if there is an afterlife, and you have rituals associated with that. So these are the different types of religions we're going to look at in this particular chapter, and the main thing to remember is that religion kind of gives you the difference between the sacred and the profane in our lives. And any religion anywhere, not just the dominant religion you and I are familiar with, any religion anywhere gives you these distinctions, and it provides guidelines for behavior and interesting stuff that we're going to look at in this particular unit. The next time we see each other, we're going to talk about some classical sociological theorists, Karl Marx and also Max Weber, and how they examined the connection between religious beliefs, practices, rituals, ideas, guidelines for behavior, interacting with the supernatural, all of those different kinds of components of the definition of religion. We're going to look at the way they analyzed Christianity in particular and how it was connected to the system of norms in society and the economy and social stratification in particular. So we're going to need to review Karl Marx with the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. We're going to also need to look at Max Weber again and look at the wealth, power, and prestige concepts that he observed about religion, and look at how social stratification happens or is supported by or caused by, according to their explanations, religious behaviors and belief systems. So it's going to be pretty interesting, I think, so I hope to see you again soon. Bye.